You've been told that golf is Scotland's gift to the world, that the misty links of St Andrews are the sport's holy ground, that the Scots, those dignified men in tweed, lovingly nurtured this game from birth. That story is a lie. The truth, hidden in a piece of yellowed parchment held today by the National Records of Scotland, is this. The very same nation that now sells itself as the home of golf once made the sport a crime. Not once, 3 separate times. And the men who criminalized it weren't fringe officials. They were kings. The first written mention of golf in human history is not a celebration. It's a ban. To understand what really happened, you have to forget the postcard version of 15th century Scotland. There were no manicured fairways, no clubhouses, no prize money. There was a small, poor, perpetually invaded kingdom ruled by a weak monarchy and constantly bracing for the next English army to march north. Military training was not a hobby. It was the law. Every able-bodied male over the age of 12 was required to show up 4 times a year at gatherings called Wapenshaws, where local lords audited their archery skills. The longbow was Scotland's nuclear deterrent. A trained archer could fuss 10 to 12 arrows a minute. Without those archers, Scotland did not exist. The kingdom's entire defense rested on ordinary men picking up a bow on Sunday afternoons and hitting a target nailed to a parish church wall. But the men weren't doing that. They were doing something else. They were sneaking off to fields, churchyards, and city streets with crooked sticks and small leather balls, and they were playing a game called Ye Golf. It was loud, it was disruptive. It was, in the language of the day, unprofitable. It broke windows, it clogged public spaces, and worst of all, it was more fun than archery practice. So on the 6th of March, 1457, in the 14th Parliament of Scotland convened at Edinburgh, King James II sat down with his lords and did something that should be inscribed above the gates of every golf course on earth. He passed an act of Parliament making the game illegal. The exact wording survives. Football and golf were to be, quote, utterly cried down and not used. Anyone caught playing was to be punished by the local barons. If the barons failed, the king's officers would handle it. The official charge against the sport, written in the rough Scots of the period, was that it was an unprofitable pastime that interfered with the defense of the realm. This is where the official narrative collapses. Most golfers assume that ban was a brief, eccentric royal tantrum. The data tells a different story. The ban was repeated in 1471 under King James III. It was repeated again in 1491 under King James IV. 3 monarchs across 3 generations, across 34 years, all reaching the same conclusion. Golf was a national security threat. Hidden in the fine print of the 1491 Act is the most damning language of all. Parliament classified golf alongside, quote, Uther Sikh unprofitable sportus, and threatened a fine of 40 shillings collected by the sheriff against anyone caught playing. 40 shillings in 1491 was real money, roughly the price of a small herd of livestock. The Crown was not joking. And here is the part the Tourism Board does not want you to know. The bans clearly didn't work. Parliament had to keep passing them because the Scottish public refused to stop playing. 3 acts in 34 years is not a deterrent. It's a confession. The Crown was losing. So what changed? Why is golf legal today? It wasn't a moral awakening. It wasn't a sudden royal love of the sport. It was a treaty. In January of 1502, King James IV, the same king who had reaffirmed the ban only 11 years earlier, signed the Treaty of Perpetual Peace with Henry VII of England in Glasgow. With the threat of English invasion suddenly off the table, the entire legal foundation for banning golf vanished overnight. The kingdom no longer needed every man at the archery butts. The Wapenshaws became theater. The longbow became obsolete. And that is when the story takes its most cynical turn. Hidden in the records of the Lord High Treasurer of Scotland, dated September of 1502, is an entry no average golfer has ever heard of. King James IV, the man whose own parliament had outlawed the game just over a decade before, paid 14 shillings to a bowmaker in Perth. The purpose? A custom set of golf clubs for himself. This is the first recorded purchase of golf equipment in human history, not by a peasant, not by a craftsman, by the king who had banned it. The legacy of 1457 is bigger than a forgotten footnote. The myth that golf was lovingly invented and protected by Scotland is contradicted by the kingdom's own laws, and the deeper origins are messier still. The word golf itself appears to derive from the Dutch kolf, meaning club, and a remarkably similar stick and ball game called kolf was being played in the Low Countries as early as 1261, nearly 200 years before the Scottish ban. A trade between Scotland and the Netherlands ran heavily through the 14th and 15th centuries. Whatever golf was, the Scots almost certainly borrowed pieces of it. What the Scots actually did was not invent the game. They criminalized it, then monetized it. The instant the kingdom had nothing to fear, the same monarchy that had tried 3 times to kill the sport bought the first set of clubs and turned it into a royal pastime. From there, it became aristocratic, then institutional, then a global industry worth tens of billions of dollars a year. The next time someone tells you golf is a noble Scottish tradition, remember the parchment of March 6th, 1457. Remember the 40-shilling fine. Remember the king's officers hunting players in the churchyards. The game you love today survived not because it was protected, but because it was finally profitable. The story you think you know is a myth. The real history of golf doesn't begin on a fairway. It begins in a courtroom. If you want more of golf's hidden history, the scandals, the cover-ups, the corporate decisions the industry buried, subscribe.